All right, folks, we're going to get started. Try it again. Try it again. All right, folks, we're going to get started. Thanks for coming tonight. This is a hybrid work session, meaning we got folks in person and we got folks online. That's recording this. Matt, you picking us up? All right. We have about 39 attendees online. Last count was about 30 in the room, might be a little bit more. Tonight presenting will be myself, Dave Modricker, Public Works Director, and Ron Seibert's with us, Township Engineer. Our Finance Director may join us. If I see him in the audience, I'll promote him to a panelist. And Nick Figaro is our Community Coordinator. He's in the building. He's monitoring the chat and the question and answers. Just kind of a little layout of how we're going to proceed this evening. I have about a 35-minute presentation. What I'd like to do is hold the questions till after I'm done. I'm going to open it up for questions to folks in the audience. You'll ask a question. I'll try to repeat it for those online. We'll do the best we can to answer it. And then we'll move on to the folks that are online. We'll pick up some of the chat and the Q&A. So while we're presenting, Nick will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A, but we won't be providing any answers till the end because the answers are going to come from Ron Seibert and myself, and we're hosting and talking, so we can't monitor the Q&A. So we'll go ahead and get started. So once again, thanks for attending. Purpose of tonight's really to help folks understand how to apply for credits and exemptions. Just as a little bit of background, I'm sure you all know what the stormwater fee is. It was adopted in February of 2021. The bills will go out in March of 2022. They're due in June or same time frame as your real estate tax bill. We did send out a sample so you can see what that looks like. The basis of billing is a ERU or an equivalent residential unit. So regardless of size, single family detached units are billed one ERU. Everything that's non-residential is billed as an equivalent ERU. Currently, in the growth area, one ERU is $119. Outside the growth area, $75. Throughout this presentation, there'll be links to find more information. Presentation will be available, posted on our website after tonight's meeting. It will be televised and hosted on CNET a number of times. And if you need paper copies, you can see us here at the Township office. The fees are an estimate. They'll be based on a fee schedule that's adopted by the board every year. For more information on your fee, there is an interactive map on our website. I'll show you how to get to that map. It's very simple. It's on the home page. You scroll down. I have the link here for reference. I know it's a long link. You're not going to write it down, but it's on our webpage. So tonight, we want to talk about how you could reduce your stormwater fee. There's really three categories. You can lessen your impervious area, you can apply for a credit, or you can apply for an exemption. And we're going to talk about credits and exemptions tonight. So what are the credits, who are they available to. I'll go over some of that. The resource is a credit manual. Again, that's available online. I'll show you how to get to it. If you need paper copies, just contact our office. We'll get you paper copies. What I would suggest is immediately go to about page 7. That's where you'll find table 1. It's a summary. On the left-hand column, tells you what the credits are. To the right of that, it explains what properties are eligible. So where it says RES, that's residential, everything with an X, residential properties can apply for those credits. I'll go through a couple examples. If you're not residential, you're non-residential, and then there's 4 categories. All, so everyone who's not residential can apply. Educational institutions have 1 credit. Agricultural properties have 2 more credits, or 2 credits, and MS4 has 1 category. The maximum credit is listed on the last column, and cumulatively cannot exceed 40% per parcel. I'm going to go through an example of a disconnected downspout. A lot of folks I talk to that own a house are interested in this credit. So you look at the chart, you see that you're eligible, and then you go just beyond the chart and you read the description. So everything that's checked below has a description. So we also have, in this case, adopting an inlet. So I'm going to go through those 2 examples. So you can read a description for a disconnected downspout. It basically says, if your downspouts don't discharge directly to pavement or directly to the storm sewer, rather they discharge to an underground, stone sump or to a grass area, and it's separated by 10 feet before you get to pavement, you would qualify for a disconnected downspout credit. So in this example, a residential homeowner decides he wants to adopt an inlet. Earlier, there was a narrative that talked about what that meant. The table showed you could get a credit of 20%. Basically, the property owner says, I want to adopt an inlet near my home. I'm going to keep the top of the grate free of leaves and debris. If there's problems, I'll report them to the Public Works Department. That qualifies you for a 20% credit. That same residential property owner has 4 downspouts. In this case, 3 of them drained a lawn area. 1 of them goes to the pavement. So he's eligible for 3 of his 4 downspouts. And the credit is worth 20%. So 3/4 of 20 is 15%. So, we'll do the math for you, but that is how it works out. So credits are cumulative up to 40%, so that property owner submits an application. I'll show you how to do that. Eligible for a 35% credit. So credit forms are available online. You can request a paper copy, or you can stop by the office and pick them up. To fill out the credit form online, you go to our homepage. You scroll down on the home page, and right in front of you will be apply for credits and exemptions to reduce your stormwater fee. You click there. It'll take you to another page that lists the different applications. In this case, you're going to click on an application for a non-structural best management practice. There's a little description, but if you are submitting for any credit other than a stormwater basin or an underground detention system under a parking lot, something structural, more than likely you're going to be clicking on that particular application. I know you can't read this, but I'm just showing you that's how big the application is. It's a little over a page. I'll walk you right through the first one. So you click on date. It autofills the date. fill out your name, street address. If you're doing it online, we need your email. If you're not, you're filling out paper, you don't need to fill that. Phone number is good to have if we need to get in touch with you. If you know your tax parcel ID, put it in. If you don't, we will fill it in for you. If you're somebody other than the person who lives at that property address, then we just ask for some applicant information. For the person that was adopting an inlet, in the description, type adopt an inlet in front of my house. Some folks upload documents. In this case, you don't have to, but if you're doing this online, you can click and upload a document. Put any comments in that you'd like. Click the sign button. It'll let you either type your name or sign it, and then you click submit. So now we're going to go through an example that's a little bit more involved, but this is for a site that has a stormwater facility. And I think at this point, Ron's going to walk us through this. So this is Ron Seibert, Township Engineer.
All right, thanks, Dave. So these types of facilities are not the ones that you're typically going to see on a single-family home. These are more related to a development. So if you have an apartment complex or a commercial site, these are the types of credits that be more applicable to somebody who's gone through a development process, had a stormwater plan prepared, constructed a facility, and then would also be eligible for some types of credits. So these folks need to understand what type of facility it is that they have, the documentation for the design of the facility. Most of them, but not all of them, have an operation and maintenance plan already completed and recorded. And if not, that's something that will be worked on, as well as the as-built plan or a structure certification form. So we'll talk about those a little bit. The potential credits that are available for these types of facilities vary depending upon what was actually constructed. And there's a year here that you'll see a lot, 2003. That's the year that the township was first required to have an MS4 permit by the Department of Environmental Protection. And when that came into play, we had to change our ordinances to require more than just flooding to regulate how much water left the property, but also water quality. So we started requiring infiltration of the water, recharge of the water, those types of activities. So if it's just a basic facility that detains the water and slows it down to try to limit downstream flooding, that one is eligible for a 10% credit. And that was the most common type of facility that was built prior to 2003. After 2003, then you would see these other types of facilities built for water quality and recharge. They would be designed to hold a certain amount of water on the property and not let it leave, requiring it to infiltrate into the ground. Most of those are going to be eligible for up to that 40% credit for recharge, because that is part of the ordinance requirement. However, sometimes a facility cannot be designed to recharge the water because of limitations on the site, typically because of the geology, the soils that are there. So there are some of those that are newer than 2003 that would not get a recharge credit, but could still get the water quality and the rate control. So at that, they would be up to 30% out of the possible 40 maximum. There is built into an ordinance a thing called voluntary exceedance. So we know every site that was designed had to at least meet the ordinance requirements, but for those that went above what was required, they would be, by more than 20%, they would be eligible for a voluntary exceedance where they would get an additional 15%. This may not help those that are already getting the maximum for the recharge, but if all you had was a rate control facility, but you had exceeded by the 20%, then you would also be eligible for that voluntary exceedance. A recorded operation and maintenance agreement gets you 5% as well. Again, the same process, the same location that Dave just described as to where you would go to apply for these online. It's that Stormwater Fee Program page on the township website. You would click that same link and it would take you to the page that he had showed earlier. But we're going to now select the one that says BMP structures. So just below this where you can't see it on the screen would be the one for non-structural. And then there's another link there for structure certification. It's further down. And that may be required for some of these facilities if you want to certify them, if you did not already have a record plan prepared whenever your site was completed. So again, for most of the sites after 2003, you won't have to do that because that record plan was already completed. For those prior to 2003, most likely will go through that structure certification process. And essentially what that does is it's a verification that the facility was built and is functioning as it was intended to. This is, again, part of that form for structure certification. You can see the different types that you would select, be it rate, water quality, or recharge, and again, the voluntary exceedance. The year of installation is helpful. We will look, obviously, in our records to verify what we have, and there's an option there also for additional information. So some of these are going to be pretty unique and pretty special, so we're expecting you to give us as much information as you can to help us verify what you have. Some of these categories then further down on the form, we ask you to check off if you already have them. And a lot of people probably don't know what they have. These properties might have been developed 20, 25 years ago. We're not expecting you to know everything for the ones that were built a long time ago. Call us, contact me. We've already had some people doing that, emailing us, hey, I don't know what I have. I've got this basin in front of our church. What's it doing? And so we'll go for our records and we'll figure out what we have and we'll work with you, let you know what the maximum amount of credits you'd be eligible for and what you need to do in order to get those. So there you'll see again that structure certification form listed at the bottom as something that may have to be completed that we verify that it's there and functioning properly. The timelines for these credits, and I think they're pretty similar for all of them. Specifically for the structural ones, applications are due by September 30th of the year before the credit will be applied to the bill. So for 2020, what year is this? 21. Yeah, it's just been a weird year and a half, hasn't it? For 2022, so this is an opportunity to apply for credits through September of this year for next year's bill when they come out. After September 30th, then that gives us time to verify everything and certify it before the tax bills have to get prepared. For these structural BMPs, you only have to apply for the credit once, and then that credit stays with that property as long as that BMP is being maintained. The other exemptions and credits, the other exemptions is an annual renewal, but these are a one-time application. There will be routine inspections that will be done just to verify that the BMPs are functioning properly. We do that for all BMPs that were constructed after 2003 as required by DEP under our MS4 permit. These facilities, even the ones prior to 2003 that would be getting credits, would get added to that inspection cycle. And right now, that's once every 5 years. So we take all the BMPs in the municipality and we break them out. We do about 20% a year. And then I think I'm going to throw it back to Dave for the agricultural, and I'm sure you're probably going to have questions about this stuff for the structural BMPs. I'm here afterward, and I'm always available. You can call or email into the township to get a hold of me on that stuff.
Thanks, Ron. So what Ron talked about were credits that pertain mostly to subdivision and land developments. So, for example, condo units and whatnot that have the structures on their properties. The credits that I had talked about earlier, a lot of those pertain to residential homeowners. I can go back and spend a little bit more time on that chart if you'd like. There's credits for turf nutrient management. Basically, if you, for example, have a soil sample, send it to the Penn State Soil Lab. It doesn't cost a lot. I know it takes your time. But then if you say, I'm going to apply nutrients and lime fertilizer in accordance with this plan, that qualifies for a credit. There's a credit for a disconnected impervious area. So if your site has a small ratio of building and house to the size of the lot, there are credits available for that also. I talked and went through the example of a disconnected downspout, adopt an inlet, and there's others that are in that table that if you have questions about, just contact our office. I want to touch on credits for ag properties. This is separate from the exemption. I'm going to talk about the exemption a little bit later. But if you do qualify for an exemption after you submit that, then these credits would be on top of the exemption. So credits are available for ag properties that have the different management plans in place: manure, pesticide, nutrient, E&S. To be eligible, you simply have a plan in place with the county, submit the application to our office, provide some kind of evidence that you have an approved plan in place. The other option, and we just added this recently, is if your property is in the county agricultural conservation easement program, we know that it has these plans in place. Simply state that on the form, and then it's eligible for the 15% credit. So exemptions are eligible for property owners that meet certain criteria. There's 3 different types of exemptions. There's an agricultural partial exemption, an exemption for non-profits that meet certain criteria, and an exemption for economic or financial hardship for residents. So the ag property partial exemption allows property owners that meet the definition of agricultural use and have, have less than 30% of impervious area on their property to be capped at a maximum fee of 2 times the average fee. Right now, the 2 times the average fee is 2 times 1 ERU. 1 ERU outside the growth area is $75. 2 times 75 is $150. So there is a resolution that was passed that has all the language for that agricultural property exemption. But that's it in a nutshell. If you qualify as an ag property, less than 30% impervious, you would qualify for that. Each residential property on that farm is also assessed 1 ERU. So I have a number of examples here, but I don't know that's really going to serve our purpose. But they're in the slide deck if you want to look at them. Really, if you qualify for this exemption, excuse me, what you need to know is that the farm itself would be capped at 2, and then for every house you add 1. So if you have a farm with 2 houses, it's 2 plus 2 is 4 ERU. So 4 times 75 is 300. So that would be the fee. So you do need to fill out the ag partial exemption form. We sent a notice to folks to let you know that I met with the county. I think one of the county extension agents may have also tried to send folks notices. We're doing educational sessions like this. Again, you can fill out that form 3 ways. You can go online. I know some folks don't have internet access. You can contact this office. We will mail it to you, or you can stop in and pick up a paper form. So you click on Ag Property Partial Exemption Application. It looks a lot like the application that was brought up earlier. What's different, I highlighted. You would indicate the number of dwelling units. You would read the signature, sign it, and submit. The economic or financial hardship exemption exists to allow households that have limited income to qualify for an exemption. So it provides 100% exemption to families that earn less than 2 times the poverty level, and a 50% exemption to families that earn less than 2.5 times the poverty level. So I put that together in a little graph. It's available in the slide deck. We'll have it available at the office. So those are the criteria there. So There's just an example of how a family that makes a certain amount of money would qualify for a certain amount of credit. Once again, on our website, there is an economic hardship exemption application form. In this case, the thing that's different is that you would fill out the form indicating your income. You would need to attach a tax return or some document acceptable to the finance director. Sign it, upload it, click submit. Again, if you don't have internet access or you're not able or not comfortable doing it that way, contact our office. We'll help you with it. We'll get you a form. We'll mail it to you, or you can stop in and pick one up at the front desk. There's an exemption for nonprofit organizations that meet certain criteria. Basically, if the stormwater fee exceeds 1% of your gross annual revenue, you would qualify for an exemption. You would go on our website, scroll down to nonprofit exemption application. An example here is we have a qualified nonprofit. Stormwater fee is listed. They check their total annual revenue, divide the revenue by the fee, and you can see it's more than 1%. So they would qualify for a full exemption from the stormwater fee. So in this case, you need your EIN and some some IRS forms. If you have questions, Eric Anderson, our finance director, is the point of contact. You can call me. I'll get you the answer, but these particular forms will go to him for his review. Again, the forms are available here at the office to pick up at the front desk, or we can mail them to you if you're more comfortable filling out a paper form. So, in summary, how do you apply for credits and exemptions? Take a look at that table in a credit manual. Look and see if there's, a credit that you're interested in that you think you might qualify for. For a little bit more information, you go to the next page of the manual, and it'll give you about a paragraph description. And again, they are due by September 30th, the year before the credits to be applied. As Ron noted, exemptions do need to be applied for every year. I understand that we will be sending reminder notices to help folks in that regard. When you're filling out the forms, if you need help, contact our office. If you don't know the tax parcel ID, let it blank, we'll fill it out. For more information, you can contact our office. I do want you to know that there is an interactive map for those that have internet access and are comfortable navigating around. On the front page, you scroll down to where it says interactive map. If you click that, it'll bring up a kind of a parcel map, and you can scroll around geographically, or up in a bar, you can type an address. It'll take you to that parcel, and you'll find information about the fee, the number of ERU, the impervious area on your property, and what credits you've applied for. So as the applications come in and they get processed, we update our GIS system. It links to this, and then you can take a look at it. If you're interested in information on all the words that Ron and I are talking about that are in the form of resolutions or ordinances, again, they're available online. If you don't have access to them or can't get there, contact us. We can get you paper copies of them. And again, a good resource for credits is the credit manual. There might be more in that manual than you care to wade through, but again, just go right to the table. That's going to kind of focus in on what credits you might be interested, and then behind those a small description. So CNET is recording this for those that aren't able to be here, or for those that want to review what we said. It'll be airing, looks like 5 times here in the future in the next couple weeks. That's my contact information, as well as Ron Seibert's if you have questions. Again, our finance director, Eric Anderson, may be able to help you with some questions. So at this point, I think what we're going to do is we've ended our kind of formal presentation. I'm going to open it up to questions. We'll try to see what we can do in about an hour with questions. I know that there are a number in the chat and the Q&A. Just before I get there, I'll ask folks that are here in person if they have questions. We got about 41 attendees online, and probably easily that here in the audience. So if you have a question, I think the easiest thing to do is, if you would, just stand up. You know, if you want, you can say your name. If not, just ask your question. I'll try to repeat it for the folks that are joining us online, and we'll do our best we can with answers.
Ron Gilligan, 3771 West Whitehall Road. My father and I have 2 properties that there's not one single drop of water that comes off the 200 acres in all of our buildings that goes into any kind of stormwater basin. We're a half mile off of Whitehall Road. There's just no water goes anywhere except it absorbs into the ground. That gets into State College Water Authority and shipped behind our farm, and then it gets sold to State College. Is there any exemption for that? Is this the 40%? Is this, what do we have to do to?
Sure.
We're out here in the farms, everything's backwards. We're out here in the farms where we're getting $1,000 to $3,000, $3,500 bills, and we're not into developments. But we don't have any water going to stormwater management, but we're putting the bill compared to somebody having a $119 house that does have the problem. We don't have the problem. We don't have any problem, but we're getting absorbent bills. John Campbell, a neighbor, I just figured it out, he has to give 6 acres of corn away to pay for what he's getting billed for his farm that has nothing to do with any developments. And it just, this whole thing went through with Zoom meetings that half of us don't even know how to do or want to do. And I heard that everybody was going to get billed $119, $185, and seemed everybody was happy with that. Now we're getting bills for $1,000, $3,500. And I just wonder if this all got crammed down our throats. And without all of us getting together like this, because I heard you say earlier, you're surprised how many people are here. If COVID wasn't going on, you wouldn't be able to fit all the people in Ferguson Township in the building to put up with this. And I guess my question to you is, the 40%, is this something we're gonna get by not having any water going anywhere that has to do with the drain? And I've had Ron out to my house where I live. I've got your whole development on Harold Drive draining through my property into Mike Suddick's property. And all I get from that's a shrug of the shoulders and tough luck, buddy. I mean, I ought to be getting something back for all the mess you guys are creating on me, let alone me paying you. And it's just, the whole thing's really asinine. And I really hope someday it comes back to where the Dan Harners and Mick Peters and Cecil Urbans and different people get on this board that has some sense. The people on this board right now are a bunch of people that live within about a half mile of Penn State, and they're running our township, and it's really getting asinine. I'd love to run on it. I couldn't sit through one of these meetings all night without the police coming in and taking me out of here. It's just the whole thing, there's no common sense anymore. You guys are running around in $1 million vehicles, picking up sticks, and it's nuts.
So everyone in the room heard what Mr. Gilligan had to say. For those that are attending online, basically expressed some frustration with the stormwater fee. Tonight, we're talking about how to apply for credits and exemptions. One of his questions was, due to the limited amount of water that runs off his property, what exemptions might be available to him. He also mentioned something about some of the large bills that some of the folks in the ag community were receiving. I'll address the latter question first. So for those folks that have ag property, you're going to want to apply for the partial ag exemption. That limits the fee on your property to 2 ERU for all of the farm and 1 ERU for the residents. So if you received a bill for $2,000, you're an ag property, you have less than 30% impervious, you want to fill out an exemption form, and the fee is limited to 2 times the ERU. Other properties that are not ag, the exemptions that are available would be the ones that I described regarding a financial hardship or the nonprofit. Credits that are available to you are those credits that are listed in the table. The fee is based on impervious area, and there are some functions such as compliance with the MS4 or projects that are built or projects that are benefit the entire township. It's not a perfect system. Some equity was tried to be put in place with the ag exemption I described, and a designation between an urbanized area and the cost of service in a non-urbanized area. So I'm going to see if any other folks in the room have questions. Oh, go ahead. I think you were first.
Dave, I have a question about the stability of the ERU. What are the variables that affect it, and how has it changed, either up or down?
Okay. Yeah, the question was about the variability of an ERU. There were 2 different methods predominantly that were investigated. One was based on 1,000 square foot of impervious in units, and the other was the ERU. So the ERU is the same fee for residential units regardless of size. So there's a lot of discussion about if that should be the method or the impervious area. So the stability of the ERU really is in the housing stock that exists. So that's not really a variable. But then properties that are not residential are equated to an ERU. So, for example, a 30,000 square foot impervious lot would be divided by 3,097. That's the number for a square foot for an ERU. It would come up to around 10 ERU. So while the impervious area remains, the ERUs will remain steady. I think maybe part of what your question might be is the fee for the ERU, how much that might fluctuate. So there's a cost model that was established, and those fees will be evaluated and set by the board every year in a fee schedule. So just like they look at your taxes every year, they'll look at the fees every year. Yes.
My name's Ivan. I live on a private lane about half a mile off of Tadpole Road. And my wife, she filled out the Ferguson Township exemption application. And at first we got the estimate as 1 ERU, and then she filled out the exemption, and now our fee is 3 ERUs. Can you explain why that went up? Because we filled out an exemption form?
You'll probably need to let me look at that after the meeting. I don't know if I processed it or if I'm familiar with that particular example.
Yeah, that would
But
be
yeah,
great.
I'd be happy to help you with it.
And then along the same lines, since we're not even on the Tadpole Road and all our water, we have a lot of green space, we're actually absorbing more water than draining into the public culverts. Shouldn't Ferguson Township pay us to collect the stormwater instead of the other way around? Serious question.
No. Serious answer.
Why is that?
I don't think we're going to have that discussion here tonight. I'm trying to help folks with credits and exemptions.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on credits or exemptions? Yes, Bill?
With regard to the ag exemption, when you look at the form, it asks at some point to submit verification of certain aspects of your ag operation, manure management, nutrient management. What form are you asking us to submit that information in? Is it all self-certifying, or are you asking us to submit to you our manure management plan and our nutrient management plan and those kinds of things?
It is self-certified. We want some kind of evidence that it's in place. So whether it requires us to contact the county, or you tell us, you know, it's filed with the county on such and such a date, or give us a copy of a cover page, or anything that helps us know that you have a plan in place. If you're in the Ag Conservation Easement Program, we know those plans are in place. So simply state you're in the Ag Conservation Easement and you don't have to submit anything. I also believe the county, you know, sent notices to folks that if anybody does need help with plans to help them get credits, the county's willing to help put together any plans that you might need. I think a lot of folks have them in place. It's just a matter of letting us know you have them.
So on the form, if we indicate that we have the appropriate ones in place, for example, manure management doesn't apply to all of the ag properties.
Right.
It only applies to those where there's animals involved. So that wouldn't be there.
Right.
But you're saying that we would just need to certify that there is a nutrient management plan in place, and not have additional paperwork attached to the application.
Bill, if you can assure me you have a plan in place and there's a piece of paper somewhere that you can read it when you need it, that's all I need to know.
Okay,
Try to keep it simple.
okay,
We're not looking for stacks of paper to process.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that's clear to all of us, that we don't have to submit that kind of information to get the ag exemption.
It would help if you told us that you had a plan on file with the county. We can call the Conservation District and check if we feel like we need to.
Thank you.
Is that Mr. Horner?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a question about the hardship form. Is that based on just the earned income or the total income?
So the hardship, the question was the basis for the hardship form. The hardship form is based on family income. I believe the resolution is geared toward residents primarily, so it would be the family income for the household.
My question is, does that include interest income, social security income, and all those other things, or just your earned income?
So the question was about the details of what exactly makes up the income. If I find that our finance director is on here, I'll try to get him to answer that later. Dan, I don't have that answer. I know you got to submit your tax form information. That's what they're going to be looking for, some way to prove that your income falls within those thresholds.
We have, in some areas, we have a fair number of senior citizens, and I think it, it includes your retirement, social security, I think those things are considerable in some cases.
Yeah.
And now I have one other question about the ag property. If ag property is within the growth boundary, does it still qualify for the exemption?
The question was about if an ag property is in the growth boundary, does it qualify for the exemption? The answer is yes. The fee would be calculated, the ERU would be 2 times 119, not 2 times 75. You're welcome. We have a second question. Is there anybody that hasn't asked the first one yet in the audience that would like to? Go right ahead, Bill.
One other thing within the forms that we see online, it consistently says that we have to apply for whatever credit, whether it's residential or ag or every year. For most of us in the ag community, our use of our land doesn't change from year to year, but we risk getting our exemption nullified if we don't turn in a request form by, I think, September 30th of each year. Is there any way the township can look at the ag exemption over a multiple year situation rather than requiring every farmer, every farm owner to apply every year for the ag exemption.
So the question was, do you have to apply for the, would the township be willing to consider something other than applying every year for the exemption for the partial ag property exemption? So that is something that can be considered in the future. I'm here right now to let you know that the way the resolution's written is that it has to be applied for by September 30th of every year. That's not to say it couldn't change, but I would need that direction from obviously the manager or the board of supervisors. So I'm just strongly encouraging everybody for now, make sure you get your partial ag exemption submitted for this year. Some of the difficulties and the reason we need it certified is the codes that are provided by the county on properties on the west end may be A, could be C, could be X, could be V. So the codes alone don't allow us to know whether it's ag property. Also that it meets the definition that was set forth, and also that it's less than 30% impervious. So I think eventually we're going to have that data, and perhaps it won't be necessary to self-certify in the future, but currently that is the way the ordinance is resolution's written.
Are you going to be letting us know when you're coming out to our property to inspect, after you fill out these forms for the exemption?
Question was about, do we contact the property owners before we go out to check on exemptions? I think maybe I'd have to answer it with a question first, like which exemption are you talking about, for example?
Oh, for that rain barrel.
Okay, so the question was for credits. Will we be contacting property owners before we go out and check on credits? For those properties that have facilities that are in easements, stormwater basins and whatnot, we don't always notify the property owner because we already have an easement. But for those that don't, for example, disconnected downspouts or rain barrels, certainly as a courtesy, knock on the door or contact you, yes. I mean, we don't really have your permission to walk around on your property. Over here first.
Don Hartster. Who will be reviewing these forms that are going to be sent in? And is there a committee set up to do that? Have there been additional staff, hired to review those forms? And who has the ultimate say?
Okay. Question was who reviews the forms when they come into our office and who has the ultimate say? Currently, all the non-structural BMP credit forms come to me for review. The structural credit forms will be reviewed by Ron Seibert with me, and the ag exemption, the financial hardship, and the nonprofits are currently all going to the finance director for review. So we're trying to keep up with those reviews as they come in. The September 30th deadline allows us some time to process those before this master file gets sent to a third-party billing. So that's why we have the September 30 deadline. So that's how we're managing it right now. Who ultimately has the say. I'm the staff person that's been delegated to manage the stormwater fee program at this point in time. The way the ordinance is written is there is an appeal process that for issues that come up that would go to a designated person and ultimately the board of supervisors if needed. And there is a position next year in the program for someone to replace what's currently a vacant part-time stormwater engineer position to review land development plans, do stormwater designs in-house, and help with this program and the review process. Yes?
Just one other quick question. I was wondering if there's a place that residents can go and see how much money is collected annually in this program and which projects are funded by our hard-earned dollars.
Sure.
Just to make sure everything's You balance the budget?
Yes. Question was, how does somebody go about seeing where the funding's going for this program and how much is being spent and whatnot? I think probably the best source of information for that's going to be our annual budget process. We do have a Fund 20 set up, and that fund is designated to handle the expenses, the revenue coming into the program and the expenses going out. And, we'll be tracking costs associated with the program so that we can, see exactly how much is being spent. Yes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and, one more question here, then I'm going to open it up to some folks that are waiting to ask questions online.
Do I understand, I have a home that the downspouts run into the ground. It's worked for 23 years. It's not running out in my grass, it's running into the ground. Are you telling me I need to disconnect those downspouts and put a barrel out there to get a credit?
Okay, I understand the question. The question was, a homeowner has a downspouts that go under the ground into a sump. Do they need to be disconnected from the ground, from the sump, and run on ground to qualify for the credit? So the answer is no. Maybe the terminology is what's a little confusing, but when we say disconnected downspout, what we mean is that it's disconnected from discharging directly to either the storm sewer or impervious area like pavement or concrete. So you do not need to disconnect them from the sumps. They're already disconnected from the impervious area and the storm system, so you would qualify for the 20% credit. And if that's not clear, we'll clean it up in the credit manual. All right, I'm going to go ahead and try to open this up to some folks that are joining us online.
You want me to read out the questions here?
Yes, please.
All right, we're going to start with the Q&A. We have a question from Sue Perkins. She lives on 15 acres that are farmed with one residential home. Her property is zoned as an RA1. Am I considered agricultural or residential?
And Nick, I hate to do this to you. I was playing with the mic. You're going to have to ask the question again.
Oh, am I coming through okay now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Question from Sue Perkins. She lives on 15 acres that are farmed with one residential home. Her property is zoned as an RA1. Is she considered agricultural or residential?
So the first place I would look is our interactive map. So there's a good chance it's zoned R for residential, in which case that would be the one ERU. We could look into that example. So we'll just have to take note of that and get back to her. If the property is actually being used as ag, she would also know that by taking a look at the interactive map and seeing what the fee is, and we could look that up too. So there was an effort made on the west end of the township for large parcels that are used primarily as residences to classify them as R, as a residential.
Another question. I'm just going right down the Q&A here. She said, Sue again, I think you said credits are on top of exemptions. Is 40% still the maximum relief someone can receive?
So 40% is the maximum credit that's allowed. And the maximum credit on top of an exemption is still 40%, if that's the question.
That's what it sounds like. Yep.
It's not the total reduction in fee, because, the ag exemption, for example, without the partial ag exemption, the fee might be in the thousands of dollars, but with the exemption, it might be $150. So if they applied for a 20% credit on top of that, that would be $30, 40% would be $60. So it comes off the fee after the exemption.
All right. Question from Glenn and Barb. Will there be an inspection of properties applying for credits?
Can folks hear this, or do I need to repeat that?
We can hear it in front.
Okay. Will there be an inspection of properties that apply for credits? Certainly not immediately. Sometime down the road, if we feel it's necessary, we may. Structural BMPs kind of fall in different classes. Those were required to inspect as part of our MS4 permit. Some of the older ones we may not be inspecting, but if they apply for credits and we bring them into our inspection program, then they'll be on a cycle. So stormwater basins, underground structures for developments, they would be inspected more routinely.
Gotcha. And then kind of a follow-up to that, they were asking if there's a fee for that inspection.
Question was, is there a fee for inspections? And the answer is no.
We had two questions. I'm just going to combine them. Sandy and Mogart and one of our people in the chat, they asked, can you explain the urban tree canopy credit?
Sure. I should have spent some time on that earlier. So there's an urban tree canopy credit. The credit recognizes that the basis of the fee is impervious area. And so if you have existing impervious area that's covered with tree canopy, there's a credit that's available to you. It also recognizes that there's a benefit to planting trees and developing the urban forest. So there's also a credit available for that. Some folks are kind of commingling the two and requesting credit for existing trees where the canopy, the branches, the leaves aren't extended out over impervious area, meaning driveways, sidewalk, patios, roof. So in the table, there's an example and a formula that talks about how many trees you need to get credits, but really the basis for it is existing trees need to cover existing impervious, new trees don't need to. So there's a credit anywhere up to 40% for the urban tree planting.
Question from Melissa Beckwith. As a nonprofit to be exempt, we not only have to be tax exempt, but we also have to meet a revenue criteria as well. As the policy states, revenue cannot exceed 1 million. Could you please clarify this?
So to qualify for the nonprofit exemption, you need to qualify as a nonprofit, and the language for that can be found in the exemption resolution, and your fee has to exceed 1% of your income. And I would say for further clarification or details on applying or what documents are needed, to follow up with Eric Anderson, our finance director. I'm just looking, Nick, is he in our attendance?
Let me take a look here.
Yeah, I don't see him, or I promote him to panelist.
It's Melissa.
Yeah, so go ahead with the next question, Nick.
Okay, she's still in here if you want to get back to it, but let's see. Next question is from Sue Perkins. Is everyone going to have to pay at least one ERU, in my case, $75? Will I get any credits or exemptions, or is it worth my time to apply for credits and exemptions?
So the question is the minimum fee for anybody $75, which is one ERU outside the growth boundary? If you have impervious area that exceeds 500 square feet, then you would be paying the one ERU as a minimum. But if it's a vacant lot, no, there is no fee for vacant lots that don't have impervious.
I'm going to jump over to the chat and just go down because people ask questions going on 30 minutes ago. So I'm just going to run through these. Bruce Springer had a question. If a condo community is served collectively as a BMP structure, does each owner have to pay for credit, or can the condo association make application for credits that are to be applied for all residential structures associated with the structure?
Yeah, the question is how credits are applied to condo associations or homeowner associations that have common area and have a common structure. The process would be that the credit would be applied to the association or the condo that owns the common area. Now, there are some condos that have asked us to independently send the bills to each of the unit owners, and we will do that. So if that's the case, and the condo association applies for credit, we'll then apply that credit to each of the individual units. So we're trying to be somewhat flexible, depending on how the HOA or association would like the bills to be sent.
Okay. Similarly, we had a question from Dom. Are members of an HOA going to be hit twice with the stormwater fee by paying for their own residence, and will HOAs also be billed, in which case they pass it on to the homeowners, raising the HOA dues?
Question is about how HOAs pay for impervious area. So some of that depends how it's classified, if it's residential or non-residential, depending on how it meets the definition. And Ron, if you're up for an answer, I'll give my vocal cords a break. But basically, the question has to do with, are they billed individually or collectively? And so, if they are classified as residential, they're billed individually, and the common area fee is billed to the owner of the common area. And if the common area asks that we distribute it among the ownership, we will do that. If it's kind of a stacked apartment or a business park, so to speak, then typically those fees are spread out equally amongst the unit owners. Those questions sometimes, Nick, are best to answer individually, and so we'd be happy to follow up with anybody that has questions about their particular parcel. And we've been doing that. Yeah.
Follow up with them. Question from, let's see, where did it go? Oh, can businesses apply for the hardship exemption during COVID? If a tenant is a nonprofit, can they apply for an exemption? Does the nonprofit have to file an exemption each year?
Question has to do with who can apply for the nonprofit exemption and for the economic hardship. So the economic hardship, as the resolution is written, is intended for residents, not for businesses. The nonprofit exemption is intended for any entity that qualifies as a nonprofit and meets the threshold of a stormwater fee exceeding 1% of the income.
Question from William Cannon. Can anyone adopt an inlet grate, or is it limited to only a person who lives adjacent to the inlet?
An inlet, close your eyes, I'm going to do this fast, does not need to be in front of your property to be adopted. So you can adopt an inlet anywhere. Most commonly, it's adopted near someone's house. But the adopt an inlet is a credit that's only available to residents. But it does not need to be in front of your house.
From Bob Hozak. What do I need to do with my HOA? Do they have any authority to approve or disapprove my application for, say, rain barrels in front of my house? It's probably a case by case.
Repeat the first part of the question, Nick.
Yeah. What do I need to do with my HOA? Do they have the authority to approve or disapprove my application for a rain barrel, for example?
So, whatever covenants your HOA has, I'm not going to address that issue. If you have a disconnected downspouts and you have rain barrels and you apply for that credit, we're going to approve the credit without researching what your covenants are. So I would suggest that if it's something that, is not allowable with your covenants, that you would check with your HOA before you apply.
Okay, couple from, I'm just going down the chat, couple from Patty Higgins. She had a question of why farms are charged more than a residential home.
I believe the question was, why are farms charged more than a residential home? So a farmhouse is charged the same as a residential home. Perhaps what she's talking about is the entire fee is based on the impervious area on the farm, but it's limited to 2 times an ERU. So that's really kind of the basis behind the partial ag exemption.
Can you apply for more than one exemption or credit?
You can apply for as many credits as you like. The maximum allowable credit for any parcel is 40%. You can apply for, yes, you can apply for more than one exemption. I'm not thinking of an example, but perhaps an example might be you own a farm and you live in the farmhouse and you qualify for the partial ag exemption and you want to file for an economic hardship based on your family income, and that would apply to the house. So I believe you could qualify for an exemption from 1 ERU as a resident if your income level supports that. So yes.
Another question. Homeschoolers apply for the education credit?
So we do have a definition for education, and I believe it's more institutional. So I'd probably have to look into that in a little bit more detail if you want to give me a note. And if that applicant, if you have some contact information, I could reach out to that person.
We have their email from signing in. Do we have to prove to the township every year that they're an ag property?
So there was a question raised earlier and it was addressed. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is it's something that can be considered in the future, but I'm encouraging everybody to make sure they have their partial ag exemptions completed by September 30th of this year.
Couple more here in the chat. Question from Bob again. If I am built regardless of residential size, but would like to put in a pervious driveway, it doesn't seem like I'd get any credit. So why would I do this?
So in terms of the credit, he's correct that it doesn't matter the size of the residential property impervious area because the decision was made to base the fee based on ERU. If he reduces impervious area or puts in pervious pavement, he may want to do that because that's his prerogative, but I don't know that we currently have a credit for that. We do have something called an innovation credit, that tries to promote, innovative ways to, reduce impacts on stormwater. So we could perhaps consider it under that.
I'll make a note to ask these. I'm just going to jump back to Q&A. Question from Kenny V. I am a residential property and have 4 rain barrels. I take them in when it starts to freeze. Do I still get a credit?
So his downspouts are still disconnected, so yes.
Is there any question from Jana and Doug? Is there any way to see how the impervious area calculation was made for my lot?
Yes. If he does have access to the website, on our homepage, there is a interactive map that may be able to help him. If not, if he contacts our office, we can kind of share GIS layer coverage with him. If it's a residential lot, it's really just informationally and it's a moot point. But if it's non-residential, it would affect the fee.
Question from Dawn. I have 75 emerald green arborvitae trees planted around the perimeter of my backyard. Do I qualify for the urban canopy expansion?
So the question is about qualifying for the urban canopy expansion. So I answered that question earlier by stating that to qualify, existing vegetation needs to cover impervious area. So if the 75 arborvitae border the property, but they don't cover pavement, pavers, house, driveway, and such, then it wouldn't qualify for the existing canopy coverage.
Question from Bob. Is there anything on the website that would indicate or show what projects have been done with the money that the township will receive from the stormwater fee?
So we put information out in various media, but there's probably not one concise spot for that right now. That's something we can work on and develop in the future.
Okay. That looks like all the questions in the chat. The FAQ, unless anybody has any online that they want to throw in.
All right, well, we're waiting to see if there's anything else coming in online. I want to thank everybody for coming. If you have questions in the audience, feel free to stay. I'll answer them. If not, I just want to say thanks again. Hopefully you know where the resources are to try to find more information. Yeah, and if you have questions, just stand up and ask. For those that have to leave, I know some people have to leave a little early, feel free. Yes, sir.
Are gravel areas considered to be impervious, am I right?
So the question was about whether gravel areas are considered impervious. In general, yes, gravel is considered impervious if it's used as a driveway or parking area. If it is other types of gravel, like a graded 2A stone or something that allows the water to percolate down through it, you'll need to talk to our office, because when we calculated it, probably showed up as impervious. For a residential property, it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect the fee, but if it's non-residential, it would.
How about dirt areas that are used for motorized vehicles on property?
We'd have to look case by case, but typically if it looks like it's dirt, it's not digitized in GI. No, it's not impervious.
So it would be pervious.
Correct. But again, if you have a particular concern, we should look at that lot and we can make sure.
Just want to make sure I'm clear, so if we file for a farm and we get the ag 40%, you're telling me that we're going to pay 2 ERUs, and if there's an additional house on the property, another ERU. If there's another additional house, another ERU. So if we're looking at a property with 100 some acres, and we jump through all the hoops here, it's gonna be 2 ERUs if it gets passed, and there's only one house on the property, so that's what it should be. No matter if the bill's $1,000 or $2,000 or
Yeah,
it's all thousands of dollars.
yeah, that's correct. The question had to do with the bills, the estimated fees that were sent out in relation to filing for the partial ag exemption. So if you have a 100-acre parcel, and let's say you got a bill that said $2,000 on it, but in fact you qualify for the ag exemption, you'd be capped at 2 ERU, so that's 2 times 75, and then you would certify on that form how many residents are on there. So if there's 1 residence, that would be 1 more ERU. If there's 2 residents, that's 2 ERU.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Mark?
Can you refresh my memory, is PennDOT part of this program that they're going to be billed also? And who other than PennDOT has a separate MS4 permit?
Sure. So the question is PennDOT part of the program, and who else has a separate MS4 permit? So I don't believe there's any property that PennDOT owns in Ferguson Township that's in the fee. Does that sound right, Ron?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's correct. The other MS4 property owner is Penn State University. They do have a lot of property in the township. Nick, are there any other questions online?
I have 4 more in front of me.
Go right ahead.
All right, from the Q&A, Sue Perkins. Once you apply for a credit, what is the time frame for approval?
Question is, once you apply for a credit, what's the time frame for approval? Initially, we thought that we would do them all as a batch after September 30th, but that's not what we're doing. We're trying to process them, as we come in, but it might be a week from when they come in till we process them. The exception to that is the structural applications. They take a little bit more work, so those may take a little bit longer. We'll be working with folks on that.
All of them will be done by November 1, though.
All of them will be done by November 1st.
Okay, question from Gwen. Is there a stormwater fee on farmland with partial woods and no buildings?
Question was, is there a stormwater fee on farmland with woods and no buildings? If there is no impervious area on that site, there would be no fee.
Question from, this is the last one that I have so far. From Sandy Mogart, are newly planted trees anywhere on a house lot count toward the exemption? Would they carry over for next year? What size tree do they have to be? That's for the canopy.
So the question was about the urban tree canopy. If for any trees that were planted, not part of a land development plan or a buffer after the adoption of this ordinance and resolution, yes, they could qualify for newly planted trees under the urban tree canopy credit. Any other questions there, Nick?
Now, one person had a question about help with exemptions. I just gave them your contact information.
Okay.
That's all we have, unless something pops up.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for those that joined us online. Appreciate your attendance. For those that are here in person, we'll be around for a little bit if you have further questions. So thanks for attending and have a great night.